Hello everyone, welcome to Best Recipes with Sharon. This recipe is for a really dainty dessert that's exceptionally delicious. This is a pumpkin cream cheesecake with pumpkin caramel sauce. Now one of the good things about this is in the fall, there's pumpkins in abundance. So you have the option of taking a fresh pumpkin and making your own puree, or you can just buy it from the can and make it any time of the year. And as with any recipe, it takes a little bit of prep time to get your ingredients together. So get out all the ingredients, get them ready, and then we'll start. So like I usually do, I will display the amounts of the ingredients on the screen and also talk you through it step by step. So alright, let's get started. Start by adding 1 cup of pumpkin puree to the mixing bowl. Then add 1 large egg, 1 cup of sugar. I just take the large spoon and mix that in. Then I add 4 ounces of cream cheese. Here I used the paddle attachment on my mixer to break up that cheese. And it's just to break it up a little bit, not to completely mix it yet. I add 1/3 cup of flour now, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, then 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, and also 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then I switched it to the whisk type attachment because it will break it up and make it much more creamy. So I used this and I beat it for quite a long time to make sure that all this becomes smooth. And every once in a while you'll have to stop it and scrape down the sides with your large spoon. And continue mixing it as long as you need to until it's nice and smooth and creamy. Now set this mixture aside. Take out a separate medium-sized bowl and a hand mixer. Add 4 ounces of cream cheese, 1/4 cup of sugar, add 1 egg, then using your hand mixer, take and mix that until it's well combined. Now you can use different sized pans for this. I chose to use a pan that was a little bit thin and a little bit more fancy, and I greased the sides of this and the bottom before I start adding the pumpkin mixture. This will create a thin cheesecake that I can make into a double layer cake. So I take a large spoon and spread it out evenly to reach all the sides. Like I said, you can use different styles of cake pans, whether you want it a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, or you can even do it square, whatever you want. Now then, take the cream cheese mixture and spread it over the top like this, just dribbling it every which way. I take just a simple butter knife and I marble it through like this. Now I have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. And the time it takes to bake this will be somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes usually. Of course that depends on the size of your pan and how thick the batter is. And I place it on the middle rack in the oven. Because this one is on the thin side, it only took about 20 minutes. And as you can see, it's starting to pull away from the sides a little bit and it's slightly browned. So I let it cool off for a few minutes and then I remove it from the pan. This pan is easy to remove it from because the pan comes apart like this. If you're doing it in a different cake pan, you may want to use parchment paper on the bottom. Now this has baked up quite well. Looking pretty good. This homemade pumpkin caramel sauce has an unparalleled depth of flavor. When you're making caramel, it's something that needs your undivided attention. Make sure that you have all your ingredients gathered together and that you're not distracted while you're doing it, because it's easy to burn the bottom of it if you don't. Make sure to use a heavy-bottomed, medium-sized saucepan. You'll start by placing your pan over medium to low heat. Add 1 cup of white sugar. Cook, stirring it often, being careful not to spread the sugar up the sides of the pan too much because it will stick to the sides. Now here you see that I have a pot that comes up the sides a little bit, so just make sure that you're not using a pan that's too shallow. You need to have lots of room where it can boil up a little bit when you add the other ingredients. As you can see here, the sugar becomes a little bit liquidy. It forms clumps. but then finally it'll melt into a light amber liquid. This process will take between 7 and 12 minutes of stirring and heating, and you can take it on and off the stove as you are cooking it. Just don't leave it alone, and turn the heat up and down a little bit if you need to. So once your liquid has turned amber and all the sugar crystals have melted, then you add the butter and stir until it's melted. Now then, we're ready to add the whipping cream, and add it a half at a time. Stir it and then add the rest. It will bubble up as you add it to the mixture, so be awful careful with that. Take and turn off your stove and remove it from the heat. Now I take it and place it on a cutting board on my counter, and then I add the rest of the ingredients. First is a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Next, a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. And also add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And this is just enough of the spices not to overpower it, but to accent it nicely. Now I add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And last but not least is 1/3 of a cup of pumpkin puree. So this is just enough of the pumpkin puree to accent the caramel flavor, and now that rich flavor comes rushing through. I was amazed at this recipe when I first made it because I thought, wow, pumpkin and caramel together, but it's really a rich and delicate flavor. Now this sauce will thicken up a little bit as it cools down also, but it can be used for different desserts as well, and it does keep well in the fridge. You can actually cover it and keep it in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. And here you can see it has a nice smooth and slightly thickened texture. And so after I've let it cool down a little bit, I am going to pour it into my jars that I have already cleaned and prepared for this. Now see how rich this looks? It really smells good too. And it's still steaming a little bit, but it's okay, it'll keep in the jars. I just won't put the lid on until it cools off. Now my jars are kind of small. They only hold probably about a cup each. So this is probably making about 1.5 cups of this sauce. Now time to unveil the golden gem of a dessert. So this is exciting. This is where everything comes together. So enough said, just watch how this is done. So after I have cut a piece, I take and stack it on top and cut another piece exactly the same size. I place it on a large plate so that I can fancy it up a bit. Now sift a little bit of confectioner's sugar over the top, quite liberally. And out onto the plate, of course. Now then, drizzle the rich pumpkin caramel sauce over the top, back and forth, and just let it be wherever it lands. And I gave it a little squirt of whipped cream on top, and dusted that with a little bit of cinnamon. Now what do you think? Would you like to have a piece? It's always best to pour the caramel on just before serving. You can serve it hot or cold, and if it's been in the refrigerator, it'll just take a few seconds in the microwave and increments of about 30 seconds. This is so good, I hope you make and enjoy it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.